I'm Dave Yaffe, co-founder and CEO of Estuary. So Estuary is a right-time data company. What that means is we make it possible to build both streaming and patch pipelines in a single tool. That idea came out of my previous company called Arbor, which was a MarTech business. We needed to build our own analytics and also operational pipelines, and we didn't want to have two different types of tools to get us there. So we did something unique and built a single pipeline that did both. Enterprises are almost uniformly on the same type of data architecture. They're using a streaming pipeline like Kafka for most of their workloads that are operational, and then and the customer in the loop experiences, and then they most likely are using some sort of analytics pipeline that leads into a warehouse. Those were imagined in a pre-AI world, and now they're so limiting to AI adoption. Specific use cases require one or the other. You need a streaming pipeline when you have a customer in the loop use case, and you need a batch pipeline when you're doing analytics. And so there's issues though. If you're building and maintaining two different ones, you're going to have to add custom work for each of your agents across both pipelines, and you'll need an engineer to do that on a streaming pipeline and probably an analyst to do that across other ones. So Estuary is the right time data platform. We make it possible to do that all in a single platform. We've spent a long time thinking about where AI is valuable as a data company, a product pipeline company. And as such, we've kind of landed on the most important things, at least to us. AI is really good at creating things. So, generative AI can create connectors. It can also create pipelines, and those are super important, obviously. Healing is another interesting one. You can monitor and heal pipelines if they have any issues, and that can help you, get through late nights safely. And then lastly, pipelines can reason, right? If I put an LLM inside of a pipeline, it's possible for me to do something like have the LLM, make an autonomous decision. So those are the things that we've been spending our time implementing into our stack and making sure that we're using AI for them as much as possible. And a lot of these will be coming out in the next month or so. So let's talk a little bit about creation. There's two different types of creation that we've identified: building pipelines, building connectors. Both of them are semi-important. Actually, they're much harder than you think, because AI is good at doing things if it has context. But creating a pipeline means that you need to do it exactly correct, right? No one wants a AI created pipeline that doesn't work or is incorrect. So it's really important that we manage to give AI guardrails so it doesn't mess anything up as it's creating these. And so those types of guardrails, those types of APIs with strong boundaries and great documentation are what it really takes to get this type of thing right. On the connector side, it's even harder, and it's because connectors are connected to third-party APIs or databases that might be not undocumented. They might not even do what they say. So we see things like eventual consistency, where if you pull an API today and then you pull it tomorrow, and you for the same time period, you get a different result. So that's obviously something that you want to avoid in a production situation, but it's really hard to tell upfront to look for all these things. The way that we found to do that is by building a big corpus of different types of things that you've seen in the past, and then focusing on those, making sure to have those all something that it can learn from. So as you add new pipelines, it can do it quickly. And so Connector Builder, using this is coming. It's working really well for us right now internally. On the healing side, something that goes hand in hand with autonomous connector creation is self-healing pipelines. If your pipelines can react to changes upstream or make up for inconsistencies in an API automatically, you can obviously move much more quickly and be pretty confident that your systems are going to work really well and adapt to any unexpected data that comes from upstream. Another thing that we look at that's interesting is event-driven agentic pipelines. This is probably a new term. And it comes from something that warehouses are doing a lot now. Warehouses are pretty good at adding the capability to reason over your data using LLMs. And that's great for analytic use cases, but what if you wanted to do something in flight? What if you wanted to reason as data is flowing through your pipeline? You get a login and you want to test to make sure that it's not fraudulent. It's easy to code a bunch of potential known bad behaviors up front and look against those, but you can't really reason. And an LLM can add that to it. So it's really nice to be able to do that. So another example is we're actually using this internally right now. We're automating some BDR tasks, and those BDR tasks are interesting because if you reach out to someone who comes to your site quickly, you'll likely get a higher response rate. We're definitely seeing that. You can also augment with data and really customize a tailored experience there. So that's all what we call event-driven agentic pipelines. Creating data pipelines is scary, right? Because data pipelines are so important. You don't want to get anything wrong. And because of that, it's really important to build on a solid foundation. One of the most important things that I can see is to have a framework that prevents mistakes, right? Things like consistency and replayability and guardrails. Those are all super important to de-risk hallucinations. Otherwise, you could end up with bad data without even knowing it. So Estuary 2.0 is what we're calling it. It's a system that's been focused on enterprise scale and helping enterprises speed up AI adoption. Things like in-flight reasoning, autonomous pipeline delivery, and compatibility with agents help drive confidence. All right, thanks for listening to me. I'm Dave Yaffe again, and we'll pass it on to Stephen.
What do you view as the what's your, I don't want to say wish list, but recommendation list for getting data pipelines ready to tackle AI at scale for the enterprise? It's evolving so rapidly, and you really do need that agility and flexibility too. Those are great points, Paul. Dave, what are your thoughts on this?
I think that one of the biggest things that we can all do is just documentation. An AI agent, you can think of them as like a new grad that's coming to your company and has been given all the keys to the castle to do stuff. And so that new grad can be really effective if they have a lot of information on what your database looks like, how everything works together, and what they should be doing, and what the relations are. But it's probably going to make a lot of mistakes in a normal workplace where none of that exists. So I think metadata, getting it all in order, making sure you're doing your bookkeeping, basically just having better hygiene than we have had on your data would be the biggest possible thing you can do.
I think that's a fantastic way of looking at it, Dave, and you're absolutely right. I'm going to let you lead off our next question. Many organizations still spend way too much time building and maintaining data pipelines rather than delivering business value. Where do you see the biggest opportunities to improve automation and developer productivity?
I think there's probably going to be right now a knee-jerk reaction for organizations that have been working with a bunch of different Python scripts that are pulling data from different sources to continue doing that and start doing it more with AI, which is probably dangerous, right? Like it's going to allow you to continue doing that, but potentially at the cost of data quality, at the cost of governance and testing and coming up with the basics, going back and getting great frameworks to be able to ensure that you're driving quality and just taking on, strong software engineering practices. All that is, even more important than it probably was. It can help to have a lot of strong guarantees in whatever pipeline you're using, being able to ensure that you're at least getting exact semantics and continuously checking sources and destinations, stuff like that. I think AI has a unique property where it can move really fast and it can make mistakes really fast, but it can also check itself pretty well. And so that's another key when you're using it. You can, as long as you're building your tests and making them properly, you probably can safeguard a lot.
Data quality remains one of the biggest barriers to successful AI initiatives. And we had a study not too long ago that, this was way up there. I think it was like 77% of AI initiatives that failed were tied to data issues. Not all data quality, but I think it was number one, if I remember correctly. So, big issue. How can modern data pipelines help ensure that AI is built on trusted, reliable data?
My co-founder has a very strong viewpoint. He's our
Mhm.
CTO, and his viewpoint is that you should always fix data at its source, right? It's the proper way to do things. If you're a software engineer, that's what you're going to want to do. And I think that there's been this draw in the industry to do that more and more through stuff like data contracts, which are ambitiously trying to get people to fix data at the source. So we've had a feature like that from the very beginning, just because my co-founder wanted it. And what we've seen is funny. It's that most of our users still want to just like let the data through and then kind of fix it downstream because it's easier. And I think it's a bit of a dangerous thing, but like kind of have to get past that if we really want high quality data that AI can autonomously act on. And we have to kind of go back to first principles and take on the hard work of fixing it at the source. That's kind of my belief. It's probably not a popular belief to a lot of people, but it's the sort of correct action.
That's interesting. So it sounds like it's not necessarily a technology problem, at least not alone. It's also kind of just a people problem if people don't want to fix the data at the source. And data architectures are becoming increasingly modular and distributed, as we all know. How are approaches such as API first design, headless architectures, and reusable data services changing the way organizations build and manage data pipelines?
We had a journey as well around this, and so we kind of went down the MCP route and said that was probably a pretty good way to let AI drive us or to drive AI, and that was fine. We then shifted to skills, right, like Claude skills, which are really nice. They're a little more directed, but
Yeah.
finally, what we did was we just started building a lot more detail and information into our APIs, so that AI could just explore the API, figure out exactly how to drive it, and then use the API directly. And we found that that's just as valuable and it works across basically everything. And then it's also valuable for human users that are trying to use your APIs. And as long as you can do that, as long as you can invest upfront in really explaining what your APIs are doing so that they're both machine and human consumable, it turns out to be the best and the most versatile way to interact with AI. So that's really like the progression that we got to. And it did lead us to just like focusing on building exactly what you should build for both humans and agents, right? Really good APIs.
Yeah, it kind of seems I don't know if you'd all agree, but if you're if you're in the data space, it seems like table stakes at this point. No?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Dave, I'm going to let you roll with this next one. AI is changing how organizations think about data engineering. How do you see AI assisting with pipeline design, optimization, monitoring, and maintenance? So, a lot of the traditional activities over the next few years. If you can kind of look into your crystal ball over there.
Yeah, I think we're trying to build towards that problem. So I've seen this very deeply. Um, I think it's going to factor into everything, right? Like creating new connectors, creating new pipelines, being able to have an agent create them for you without having a human in the loop at all, just to try to complete a task to get some data from A to B. Being able to make sure that pipeline is always working by ensuring that monitoring it. A cheap LLM can monitor your pipelines in a pretty cost effective way. So why not do that? So really end to end, I think that we're looking at a world in a few years now, or even less, probably 1 year, where most companies are reaching towards trying to create these pipelines and to keep them running with less humans and have the humans focus on the more important things like defining the actual types of business use cases that they want to solve with the data. So I think it's going to be a shift of human resources, but and kind of being assisted with AI.
Understood. I think that makes sense because you're certainly going to want those humans around. Definitely in the beginning, if you're really shifting over to automating a lot of things, but then they're the ones with the expertise at the end of the day to maybe point at additional things to automate or what things might not work as well in that capacity. Dave, what are your thoughts on this? What separates the leaders from the laggards?
Yeah, I think there's a big knee-jerk reaction when AI first came out a couple of years ago to just try to use it, right? And a lot of companies didn't even know what they were doing with it. They were just implementing it and doing stuff with it. But I totally agree and think that basically if you start using it and start realizing what it's good at and get really good at using it, just like any person who you see using it, they learn how to use it well and they become an expert at it and find more and more tasks to use it for. So it takes that with the same type of thing with organizational design. Don't throw it at every problem, throw it at the right problems.
Yeah.
And ensure that your teams are all trained on it, that they all know how to use it. I think we had an offsite a few months ago where we had some of our most prolific AI users, the ones that burn like billions of credits, train the rest of the team on what they were doing and what they could do with it. And it was incredibly valuable for everyone. We saw our sales people learn how to use it for creating messaging and our marketing people for creating content and all of that. So, this type of, I think you have a huge disparity between the people who really know how to use it and spend a lot of time on it and the people who don't. And if you can close that gap to get it disseminated through the rest of the org, people will start to understand what they can do with it and then use it properly.
I think that's a fantastic point there, Dave. And I think because it's called artificial intelligence, sometimes we forget that it is a tool and there are good ways to use it and good use cases for it and ways where you can use it that are not so great at all. I'm not a master craftsman, so if you handed me a really great saw or hammer, I'm not going to be able to do a whole lot great with that. But I think the combination of just hype or whatever else, we've had this idea that, oh, well, it's just, it can overcome anything. And I think, yeah, those examples you provided where organizations were just throwing everything at it, that's where it can lead to trouble. Well, we're almost over. We're almost on at time here, but one more, perhaps the most important question I could ask all of you today. And that question is, if there's one thing you would really like our viewers today, to our wonderful viewers, to walk away keeping in mind front and center, what would that be? And Dave, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Yeah, I guess as you're developing your agentic pipelines, we're here at Estuary would love to help you out with them.